So two of the, well, what I consider to be probably the most important tools in a traditional witch's arsenal would be the Besom and the Stang. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so starting with the Besom. Now, there are actually masculine and feminine aspects to the different tools. With the Stang, it would be a masculine aspect. The opposite to that would actually be the cup or the cauldron, which is a feminine aspect. It represents the womb of the mother, and the cauldron is always associated with the goddess, with the blood mother. When you go through an initiation period, you would enter into the cauldron of the dark mother or the blood mother, and you would get taken through the cauldron and get reborn. So the cauldron is very much the feminine aspect of the whole thing. But when it comes to the Besom is actually very sexual in nature, and it actually, although it has a lot of feminine aspect to it, it's actually a combination of both the masculine and the feminine. I've got kids here today and construction outside, so it's going to be a bit noisy. Bear with me. So with the Besom is traditionally made up of three types of wood. It's ash, birch, and willow. Now, ash, because ash used to actually be made or used to make spears, and so it's very strong. The branches are very straight, and it also therefore has the aspect of flight. Birch is very watery in nature, and this represents the feminine aspect, whereas ash is the masculine aspect. And the willow, you use willow with these to actually bind the birch to the ash. And so you can see that the masculine and feminine aspect in this. In fact, in some cases, what the witch will do will actually take the staff of the ash staff, and they will actually either just round the edge, which is going to have or get the birch twigs. It's going to round the edge or carve it into some kind of phallic symbol, and then the birch gets tied around that end. So you have the masculine, yes, I know, the masculine entering the feminine, and then the birch twigs, they form the brush end, and then the willow. Oh, I've got the whole sexual thing going on in my head now. The willy whispers, the willow actually just ties the whole thing, ties the birch onto the ash staff. So the Besom is used mostly in well, two or three main functions. The first one is to sweep the space. So last week we spoke about hallowing the ground, and before you do anything, what you want to do is actually sweep the space. And this is actually quite similar, some may argue with me here, but quite similar to doing a banishing ritual that you would do in ceremonial magic. So what you're doing is you're sweeping the space, but it's not just of physical debris that you're sweeping, out of the space. You're actually sweeping astral and psychic debris out as well. So you are cleaning the space physically, astrally, psychically, emotionally. So you're actually banishing the space. What some people will do is, this is mostly actually if you're working indoors. If you're outdoors, it's no good picking up the dirt. But if you are working indoors and you're sweeping the space indoors, then all of the dust and the dirt you actually sweep into one spot, you would then take and you would actually burn in the circle. So this actually, again, banishes any kind of negative energy which you may be sweeping up. The other method or reason for having the Besom and the method of using it is to enter and exit the circle, the compass round. Now, the one method that I was taught right at the beginning was that you lay the besom across the perimeter of the compass round. So the whole process is that the magister would go into the space. They would actually create the compass round, and then the witches that are going to be part of the actual main ritual would then enter. So the way they would do this, they would jump over the besom. Now the besom is usually placed with the brush end out and the staff end in to the compass round, and this actually represents the feminine aspect of the whole thing. So the brush end would be the vagina, and the staff would then be the birth canal, and the compass round would therefore be the womb. So you jump over the besom with the brush outside and the staff inside when you enter the compass round, and then when you actually exit the compass round, you get birthed back into the world. So you jump back over the besom, and therefore you are coming from the womb down the birth canal and out back into the world. So there's a whole lot of representation that happens here. Now the third aspect of the besom, which is usually the favorite and often creates a bit of argument and contention, is that it was used for flying, and in a certain manner it was. Obviously the witch doesn't get on the broom and actually fly, like in Harry Potter or in all the myths and tales and legends and everything else that we hear about witches of the night. So this was actually used as part of the witches' Sabbath, and I want to actually next week Friday on the 22nd, the live that I'm going to be doing then, I'm going to have Reverend Kai there with me, and we're going to be talking about walk cunning and herbology, or herbalism, but I also want to get in a bit into the witches' Sabbath and the poison path and things like that. So hopefully we'll discuss this a bit more on the 22nd. But the besom was used to actually apply the flying ointment, and the flying ointment was made up of various entheogens, poisonous plants, such as henbane, mandrake, aconite, things like that, and it was made into an ointment or a salve, and it was put on the end of the besom, and then I'm not going to get into any details. It was used to apply the flying ointment to the mucous membranes, and then the witch would obviously go into, would get high, would go into a trance, and would then travel to the witch's Sabbath. And as I said, I'm not going to discuss the witch's Sabbath now. We'll hopefully get into that next week Friday. So those are basically the three main uses of the besom. And then we come to the stang. The stang is probably actually the most important aspect of traditional witchcraft. It is the altar, and I think a lot of people consider their altar to be the most important and main aspect of their whole practice. So the stang is a forked piece of wood, and it's usually the height of the practitioner. Now, in olden days, when you couldn't actually openly practice witchcraft, what you found was a lot of farmers actually just used to use a rake, and the rakes used to either have 2 tines or 3 tines, and this would be used in place of the stang. But the stang itself is a branch which is, as I say, forked. So you've got your main staff section, and then it actually forks out into 2 separate branches. What is also possible is to actually get a staff without the forks and then actually tie the horns of a creature, stag, deer, roebuck. I have roebuck horns, onto the actual staff, in which actually creates the fork, because the stang actually represents the horn god. And what a lot of people, practitioners, often do is also place a candle between the fork, and this represents the flame betwixt the horns. And the flame, this flame that is placed between the horns is actually quite significant. So if you consider the aspect of Lucifer, the light bringer, it can even be considered the aspect of the Christ child. The horn god brings the knowledge and illumination to the path through the flame which is betwixt the horns. So that aspect of the horn god would come in from the east and would bring that knowledge and power to you, and illuminate your path forward through the actual flame and then the actual light. So it's representative, very much representative of the actual light bringer. But the stang itself, as I said, is also used as an altar. So there's a few different aspects to the stang. It's an altar, it's representation of the horn god. It is often also placed in the north to represent the horn god, but that passage that takes place between this world and the world tree, the billy tree, Yggdrasil, that the actual axis mundi. But in its aspect as altar, what a lot of working groups will do, they will place the stang at different positions around the on the perimeter of the compass round, depending on what time of year it is. So in springtime it would probably be in the east, in autumn time it would be in the west, but it would progressively move around the circle depending on the season and the holy day that is being represented, or the holy day of that time of the year. And it would be dressed appropriately for that time of year and the harvest festival that it's representing at the time. And so as I say, it would just move around the circle to represent the cycle of the year. Now, what most people will do is place it in the north, as I say. It acts as the gateway. So it is representative of the horn god, but it's also representative of the world tree. So it is that gateway in the north to the tree, which is the universe. Yggdrasil is basically the universe. It's the upper world, the middle world, and the underworld. Without Yggdrasil, if Yggdrasil falls down, the universe collapses. So it is that gateway between the worlds, so you can move from Midgard into whichever world you want to travel into. And what a lot of people will do also is take two stakes, and wooden stakes, and they'll put them in front of the stang, and this axe represents the actual doorway. And if you want to actually move in and out of the compass round, you walk through this doorway in the north. Now, this isn't the only doorway that a lot of groups use. There's also the doorway to the west, where you would actually travel into to the Rose Castle, and then into the actual ancestral worlds, into the fairy realms. But that's a whole different aspect. If you are interested in that, I would get hold of Evan John Jones' book. I unfortunately have forgotten the name of the book. I will mention it at some stage because it's an excellent book. So I'll come back to that probably. So that really is the what I consider to be the most important tools. As I say, the besom and the stang, but don't forget the cauldron or the cup as well, because that is also quite important, especially for the representation of the feminine aspect. And this Friday I'm going to be talking about twilight sleep, which is just a term used in traditional witchcraft for trance states. So we'll be having a look at that, different methods of entering it, why you would actually enter a trance state, what you use it for, journeying and traveling and things like that. So I hope everybody tunes in on Friday. It's 4 p.m. GMT time. So hopefully I'll see everybody there. Have a great week. Cheers.